Well, it's unacceptable to be fat.
Okay.
I mean, if I was president, hell, I'd put all of them in a fat concentration camp so they can concentrate on dieting and exercising, because being fat is completely not acceptable.
Well, guys, I'm sure today's gonna end civilly. There are a few topics on the internet that will bring along controversy no matter where you decide to discuss them. And today we are talking about one of the biggest of them all. Now, no pun intended there, but over the last week or so, I've gotten quite a few comments and a few DMs asking me to check out a video that the channel Jubilee recently released. It's a video part of their Middle Ground series titled "Is Being Fat a Choice? Fit Men versus Fat Men." Now, if you've never heard of this video series or Jubilee in general, basically Jubilee is sort of a social debate channel. They bring people together on camera and have them talk about divisive topics. They also do some weird dating videos, but I think they're mainly known for these kind of social experiment / debate type videos. And the Middle Ground series is exactly what it sounds like. They bring people together on opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to certain social topics, and they have them try and reach a middle ground. Except that's actually not what happens literally ever. A long time ago, Jubilee learned that nobody wants to see people get along, so they always have one or two characters who really ham it all up and get an argument going for the camera. And this video is one of the most egregious examples of that ever. They brought on none other than Myron from the Fresh and Fit podcast to talk to people about whether or not being fat is a choice. Now, if you don't know who this guy is, don't worry. I think you'll get a pretty good idea of his character during this video. I'm not going to waste any time explaining who this guy is because, one, I think you just watching this video is going to do a better job than I would do trying to explain the guy, and two, I've got over an hour of footage to scrub through to get all the good bits. We might be here a while. Let's begin. Please subscribe.
Do you think just being in a fat body and being in the public space encourages obesity?
Yes.
Shame is what led me to an eating disorder.
Whose fault
when
is that,
what
though?
we're looking for is
Whose fault is that?
stability.
That's your fault.
It's
See, the
an
problem is that you're a
amalgamation.
professional victim.
Alrighty, so not even 10 seconds in, and we've already got phrases like professional victim being thrown around, so I think you should be getting clued in pretty quickly here. Spoiler alert, I don't really feel like making a 3-hour-long video, so we're going to be jumping around mainly to the bits where Myron talks, because for the most part, everybody else here is pretty reasonable. Greg Doucette is a little questionable at times. As much as I love to watch a good natty or not, I've got to admit some of the stuff he says is a little bit out there, but nothing compares to Myron.
I have felt disgusted looking at a fat body. Can our agreeers please step forward? Whoever feels compelled to start us off.
Well, it's unacceptable to be fat.
Okay. That's a great start. I've been way skinnier than I am now, and I've been way heavier than I am now. Was I less valuable at one point in there?
Well, I mean, you can make an argument that you're less valuable when you're fatter because you drain resources, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I mean, in general, being fat is unacceptable because you control every single morsel of food that goes into your mouth.
Okay.
It shows a lack of discipline, it shows a lack of character, it shows a lack of temperance, and when you're fat, it's an outward manifestation of your inadequacies.
All right, so a lot to unpack here. First of all, fat people are less valuable because they drain more resources. What the fuck does that even mean? What resources are we talking about here? Do you just get to pick and choose which resources are okay to consume? Because Myron, you've got a lot of fancy cars, which objectively take up more resources than an economy car. Why is that okay? And then a big thing that's going to come up over and over and over again during this. Myron, and people like Myron, pretty much everybody in that red pill space, think that they get to choose what is important for everybody. Does being lean and being muscular require more discipline than being overweight? Yes, obviously. Nobody's going to argue that. But saying it's a display of your inadequacies? Myron, I'm sure there's a million things that are harder than having a six-pack that you cannot do. Why do you think you get to choose what displays an inadequacy? Why aren't you a surgeon? Why aren't you an astrophysicist? Why aren't you a world-class athlete who plays a professional sport for a living? By definition, you are inadequate to those people compared to your ability to do what they do for a living. Why aren't you more muscular? Why aren't you more lean? Why aren't you the biggest guy sitting on the jack side of the discussion? Are these all inadequacies? Because if so, this is the pot calling the kettle black. You've got a lot to work on, clearly.
Yeah,
you were
so
naturally
I've been in all
skinny
spectrums.
beforehand.
Like, I'm naturally skinny.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, I'm going to get fat as an experiment.
Yeah.
Did it. And then I was like, all right, now I'm going to lose the weight. And then all I did was just tracked my calories, I ate the same food every single day, went to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, and everything was controlled and it got done. Was it monotonous? Of course. Was it boring?
No, yeah, I agree with you there. I am naturally this way. This is with working out 4 or 5 times a week.
That's not true.
This is 100% true, bro.
Nah, bro.
No,
come to the gym with me.
It's not natural at all, because at the end of the day, if you don't lose weight, by definition, you're not in a calorie deficit. If you're not in a calorie deficit, then you're gonna either maintain or gain weight, and that's the problem, is that people don't track their calories.
And that's true, but people burn at their resting metabolic rate a different set of calories.
Doesn't matter.
All right, so unfortunately, Myron is going to say some reasonable stuff throughout this video. It's an hour-long video. It's bound to happen. Unfortunately for Myron, though, he says so many insane things that are just purely hypocritical and contradictory that it's really hard to take those reasonable things he says seriously, because you kind of lose respect for what he's saying within the first 5 minutes. For example, he says, "I am naturally skinny." You can rewind it and listen to him say, "I am naturally skinny." This guy on the right in the plaid shirt, like 20 seconds later, says, "I am naturally this way," assuming he means bigger. And he's like, "No, you're not. Nope, 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 that's wrong." This is delusion. This is thinking that your personal experience and the way that you have found things to work applies to all 8 billion people who live on the planet. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Do a lot of people make weight loss a lot harder and a lot more complicated than it should be? Yes. I've talked about this a lot on my channel, surprisingly, probably because I cover so many people doing insane diets, but a hard truth for a lot of people to swallow is that weight loss is not near as difficult as people make it out to be. It usually comes down to a lack of discipline, a lack of commitment, and self-dishonesty. Now, those things that I just talked about can be hard to achieve and overcome, but losing weight itself, not so much. It's a relatively basic process that normally breaks down only when a person gets it wrong. Now, that's not always that person's fault, which is something we're going to talk about later, but all of this is to wrap back around to saying that claiming that the way that your body looks when you eat in a way that feels, quote, natural is the correct way for a body to look is ridiculous. You can't say, "Oh, I get to be skinny and underweight naturally, but you can't be bigger than average naturally." That's not how it works. Every single thing that this guy says is motivated by his personal experiences. There's nothing objective about what he says.
But you're passing judgment on somebody's body that you know nothing about. Now, on the flip side, what if I turned around and I did the same thing to you? You're talking about how fit and stuff that you are, but you're over there and you're small as compared to these other guys. So how does that feel if someone comes? No, because you said shame, right?
That's a little.
You said shame, right?
Yeah.
So how does that feel if someone comes up and they start shaming you for size? Like, come on, it goes both ways.
We're just in the first prompt. We got to be careful about targeting each other too directly.
I mean, I'm not offended. It's fine. He's emotional.
It goes in every direction.
He's obviously very triggered.
The mental gymnastics that must be going on inside this guy's head gotta be gold medal worthy. He's gonna say over and over and over and over again that shaming somebody is the best way to get any result out of them. Yet when somebody shames him, now they're emotional. Now they're triggered. All of his arguments are baseless. They all cave in on themselves. And it sucks because nobody in this video ever really picks up on it. I watched this entire video just waiting on somebody to be like, "Well, Myron, I think your haircut's stupid. Your podcast is dog shit. I don't like the way you dress." Myron? I don't think that's a very good name. Because you absolutely know this guy would be like, "Well, I don't really care. I'm the alpha here. You're just triggered." He would have fallen apart if you asked him, "Why did that shaming not work on you, buddy? Why are you not changing your haircut? Why are you not making a completely new podcast? Why aren't you changing your clothes? Why aren't you changing your name?" He proves time and time again throughout this video that everything he says doesn't actually work, because whenever it's reversed, he does not react in the way that he says people will.
Let's reset. Jacked men are more attractive than fat men. Will the agreeers please step forward?
How come there's 4 guys over there? All right, we're living in a bizarre world where people don't see the truth. Like, how is it possible that they're thinking, no, being obese and unhealthy is more attractive than being fit and healthy? How is this possible?
Actually, you know what? This is precisely why a majority of women find a majority of men as unattractive.
Because I've been so surprised to see on Instagram, there'll be like guys doing like an outfit try on, like not in shape in the slightest bit. And all the comments are women like, I wish like men knew this is how we wish they looked, and like, oh, this is like the
Liars
dream.
for social
Liars,
media.
man. Liars for
to look good.
One thing
for
about you
clout.
can never believe what women say, man.
Guys, there are genuinely times when I'm watching a video like this and I have to step back and remind myself, this is not real life. The average person on the street does not even know discourse like this exists. This is online speak, for lack of a better term. These guys are gonna sit here for like 10 minutes and discuss attraction as this objective reality that cannot be touched, and guess what? Just happens to line up with what they believe. Myron goes into discussion about how a woman would never suck the dick of a fat man like she would a man who's jacked. And he's being dead fucking serious. They go into deep conversation about how all women are just trying to look good for social media, and they just won't admit how they all want to be plowed by some 6'6" guy with 22-inch biceps. I mean, just take a look at history. Who are the guys who have actually drawn the attention of hundreds of millions of women? Think about the last few years. Who do we got? Timothée Chalamet, Harry Styles, that Jacob Elordi guy, Jungkook, Pedro Pascal. What are we noticing here, people? None of them look like that motherfucker in the orange tank top, that's for sure. These guys sit here for an embarrassingly long amount of time, saying that every woman on the planet wants to be with a guy who's jacked out of his mind, and every woman who ever said she likes the dad bod is lying to themselves. Which is hilarious because this is a classic lonely male cope in a video where these guys complain about fat people coping too much. And this is not to say that lots of women don't find muscular men attractive. I'm sure there's a pretty large percentage of women who find the guy in the orange tank top to be the ideal body type for them. And if you polled most people, they would probably be more attracted to a fit person than a fat person. That's just reality. But to sit here and say that no person on the planet can possibly be being honest with themselves, or they're all performing for social media, when they say they prefer a guy who's a little bit bigger rather than a guy who's lean, or even a guy who's just not that muscular, is crazy.
It's a subjective kind of standpoint, but socially, I understand that physically fit men, that's just like what everyone's liking. It's like
I don't think it's as subjective as guys are trying to say. Attraction isn't a choice, and there are hardwired traits that women look for in men. And what I've come to realize is that what women put out there is what they find attractive or politically correct things. Oh, he has a dad bod. He's nice. He's a good guy. The reality is that women don't respond well and favorably to these men. There's a reason why nice guys finish last is a thing. It's because when you're too nice and you kind of bend to her will, etc., girls aren't aroused by that. Girls don't want to say what they're really aroused by. Guys that are able to stand up to them, guys that are able to tell them, well, that was a stupid comment, or hold them accountable for their stupidity when they do dumb things. This is what women find attractive because these are leadership traits.
Have any of those things happened to you, though?
Well, I mean, I've talked to almost 3,000 women, and what I've come to realize from talking to all of them is that most of the time, you know, when they're in a comment section of TikTok, like, you're so handsome, blah, 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 will they actually go on a date and have sex with that guy? Probably not. But they say that because it's politically correct, and women tend to not want to be adversarial. They're going to say what sounds good, but what they're actually aroused by are two different things.
But they're married to those guys.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was
Most
getting to.
often they're married
I'm
to-
married.
And
to-
marriage is a failed institution in the West, and this is why most men get divorced by women. This is why they get destroyed in the divorce courts. This is why women overwhelmingly initiated the divorce rates in America. 80% are initiated by women, because we sit here and we lie and we believe what women say they're actually attracted to.
So, if you couldn't quite translate that, that means no. He hasn't actually experienced any woman telling him this is what they want. For some reason, men like this cannot fathom the idea that a woman might want a person who's pleasant to be around as a partner. They can't find a girlfriend, they can't form a meaningful relationship with a woman, so they blame it on the world and say that all women are actually lying instead of looking within. Furthermore, yeah, this is definitely an age of social media thing. Every woman across the planet is lying, saying they don't like super jacked guys for social media points. That's why the Beatles got so popular in the 60s, right? Because of Instagram? I mean, yeah, that's gotta be it. That also explains Elvis, Queen, David Bowie, Prince, Michael Jackson, every boy band literally ever. Also every emo band literally ever. Bruno Mars, Justin Bieber, Shawn Mendes, The Weeknd. I mean, I could literally sit here and name off every single popular male artist ever. None of these guys are jacked. Most of them are pretty skinny. They're not going out telling women to shut up and do this or do that. Most of them are relatively soft-spoken. And in communities like Myron's, they'd probably be labeled as feminine. But for some reason, they seem to be pretty popular with women. How could that that be? Is it possible that a lot of men just cope by saying that a woman would never love me unless I have a Herculean body type as a way to perpetually explain the reason why they don't have a girlfriend? Because you can always get more muscular, you can always get leaner, and maybe, just maybe, they say that women actually want to be treated like shit so they don't have to work on their garbage personality, and they just get to say, oh, well, social media is making these women hide what they actually want. Trust me, bro, when I tell girls on the street that they need to get back in the kitchen, they might slap me and walk away calling me an asshole, but they really want to hop on my dick. If you're a young man getting caught up in this kind of thinking, I promise you, this is not the way that you are going to find a relationship. You are a human. This should be pretty intuitive. Most people want to be treated with respect and be with a person that they enjoy being around. It's not that hard. I promise you, you are not too ugly. You are not too hideous to find somebody who's gonna love you. You're not. I guarantee it. You do not need to look like Arnold or drive a Lamborghini or do anything that these guys will have you believe you need to do to find anybody who's interested in you. Do me a favor. Try and think of one single person who looks like this guy in the orange tank top, who's a celebrity, whose fan base is made up of primarily women. For some reason, an absurdly high amount of men will not believe basically every woman on the planet saying that the ideal guy is mainly just a guy who looks like a normal person. Don't believe me? Go ask your mom who she'd rather sleep with. This guy in the orange tank top or Paul Rudd. If believing that all women actually want a guy who's so yoked out of his mind that he can't even fit through doorways anymore helps you feel better about being single, don't complain about other people coping.
And we don't hold anybody accountable, and we allow mediocrity to strive in the West. And I think we need to go back to shaming fat people. We need to go back to making fun of them. I mean, if I was president, hell, I'd put all of them in a fat concentration camp so they can concentrate on dieting and exercising, because being fat is completely not acceptable. I'd have these people back in shape, because what people don't also understand is that fat people bring a big burden on the healthcare system. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, etc. It's a big problem.
Do you really mean that, or are you just saying that?
Yeah. I'm dead ass. Yeah, if I was president, make me president, I would get rid of the obesity problem like that.
Alrighty, and I think that's where I've had enough. Guys, it's literally an hour of stuff like this. I could sit here for so long and just pick apart everything these guys say, but honestly, it's just not worth it. Pretty much everything this guy says warrants like 10 minutes worth of talking. At one point, he says that everybody who's depressed deserves to be. He quadruples down on his idea that shaming everybody for everything is the best way to get change. And look, I myself have been a public supporter of bringing back shaming, but there's a difference between shaming somebody for something like saying being 200 pounds overweight is good for you, there's no problems, stuff like that, and shaming a person because you don't like the way they look. Two completely different things right there. It's really just a complete mess of a video, but I've got to cut myself off somewhere, and this is where I'm deciding to do it. If you want to have even more of a headache, be my guest and watch the original. It only gets worse, I promise. Well guys, what do you think? Should we send everybody who's not 7% body fat to prison? Should doing anything that Myron doesn't like be a federal offense? I'm starting to think he's on to something. Wrapping this video up, I feel like this video might end up having kind of an all over the place vibe, considering the fact that I tried to condense an hour and a half of footage into a video under 20 minutes. But hey, that's fine. Unless it's not, I'll have to ask Myron. This might be an offense punishable by death. We'll have to see. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and walk on over to that subscribe button and touch it. It's free. It won't cost you anything. But for now, that's all I have for you today. Bye.